After midnight on March 8, 2014, Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia's capital was experiencing a busy night. That night, a Boeing 777-200ER aircraft was preparing for a routine flight to Beijing, the capital of China. This was Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370. On board were 12 crew members, including Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah and First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, and 227 passengers from 14 different countries. Everything seemed normal. Passengers had settled into their seats, fastened their seat belts, and were waiting for an ordinary night flight to begin. At 12:42 a.m. local time, MH370 took off from the runway and began to ascend into the sky. According to the flight plan, it was to enter Vietnamese airspace and then continue its journey towards China. The first 38 minutes of the flight went smoothly. The aircraft reached its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet, approximately 10,600 meters. The last communication with Malaysian Air Traffic Control was established at 1:19 a.m. The controller told the aircraft to contact Ho Chi Minh Air Traffic Control in Vietnam. The response from the captain or first officer would become one of the most chilling last words in aviation history. Good night, Malaysian 370. This was the last human voice heard from MH370. Just 2 minutes later, as the plane was about to enter Vietnamese airspace, it suddenly disappeared from radar. The aircraft's transponder, the device that reports its identity, speed, and altitude, had been turned off. For air traffic controllers, MH370 was now just a ghost. At that moment, no one knew this was the beginning of one of the greatest aviation mysteries in world history. A massive search and rescue operation was launched immediately. Initially, the search focused on the South China Sea, the aircraft's last known location. Dozens of ships and aircraft from 26 countries began to scan every square meter of the ocean. But as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, not a single trace of MH370 was found. Not a piece of wreckage, not a life vest, not an oil slick. It was as if a giant Boeing 777, with 239 people inside, had vanished from the sky. However, as the investigation progressed, a startling fact emerged. Although civilian radars had lost the plane, military radars told a different story. According to military radar records, after disappearing from radar, MH370 made a sharp turn and flew back west over the Malay Peninsula. This was the opposite of its planned route. The aircraft then crossed the Strait of Malacca, headed towards the Andaman Sea, and flew out of military radar range. This was a deliberate act. Someone had intentionally diverted the plane from its course. So, where did the plane go after it disappeared from military radar? This is where satellite data came into play. A British satellite company called Inmarsat had captured automatic signals sent hourly from the aircraft's engines. These signals did not provide the exact location of the aircraft, but contained pings that indicated the aircraft's distance to the satellite. These pings showed researchers that the aircraft had remained in the air for about 7 more hours after it disappeared. When this data was analyzed, 2 possible flight corridors emerged. One was a northern corridor, stretching towards Central Asia. The other was a southern corridor, heading towards the desolate and deep waters of the Indian Ocean. The northern corridor included the airspace of many countries, and it seemed unlikely that such a large aircraft could fly for so long without being detected. Therefore, investigators focused on the southern corridor. The theory that the plane ran out of fuel and crashed into the ocean in a remote area west of Australia became the most likely scenario. With this new information, the focus of the search operation completely shifted. The searches in the South China Sea were called off, and all resources were redirected to the southern Indian Ocean. This was one of the most challenging and unexplored ocean regions in the world. Giant waves, stormy weather conditions, and an ocean floor thousands of meters deep made the search nearly impossible. In the years of underwater searches, hundreds of thousands of square kilometers were scanned with sonar devices and autonomous submarines. But the result was again disappointing. The main fuselage of the aircraft could not be found. However, just as hope was beginning to fade, an unexpected development occurred in July 2015. 16 months after MH370 disappeared, a piece of an aircraft wing washed ashore on Reunion Island, off the east coast of Africa. This part was a control surface known as a flaperon. After examination, It was confirmed that the serial number of the part belonged to the missing Boeing 777. This was the first physical evidence from MH370. In the following months, more than 20 other pieces of debris were found washed up on African coasts, such as Mozambique, Tanzania, and Mauritius. These pieces confirmed that the aircraft had indeed crashed into the Indian Ocean. However, these parts gave no clue as to why or how the plane had crashed. So what happened to the plane? Countless theories have been proposed. One of the most talked about is the pilot's suicide theory. According to this theory, Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah deliberately hijacked the plane and flew it into the depths of the ocean. The discovery of flight paths similar to routes planned towards the southern Indian Ocean on the captain's home flight simulator strengthened this theory. However, the captain's family and friends said he was not the kind of person to do such a thing, that he was a vibrant and stable individual. There was no concrete suicide note or evidence of a psychological breakdown. Another theory is hijacking. Perhaps one or more passengers took over the cockpit and diverted the plane to an unknown location. However, the passenger list was repeatedly checked, and no suspicious person was found. Furthermore, no terrorist organization claimed responsibility for the attack. There was also no logical explanation for why a hijacker would fly silently for 7 hours and then crash into the ocean. The mechanical failure theory has also been frequently mentioned. Perhaps there was an event like a fire or decompression, a sudden drop in cabin pressure. This situation could have rendered the crew and passengers unconscious. The plane might have continued to fly on autopilot until it ran out of fuel. This ghost flight scenario could explain why the plane flew silently for hours. However, this theory also falls short of explaining why the plane deviated from its course, made a sharp turn, and why its communication systems were turned off. Years passed, and the official searches were suspended in 2017. In 2018, a private company, Ocean Infinity, launched its own search on a no-find, no-fee basis, but they also found nothing. Today, the fate of MH370's wreckage and the 239 people on board remains a mystery. This event is not just a plane crash, but also a painful lesson showing the limits of modern technology and our helplessness against the power of nature. For the families of the missing, this uncertainty is a never-ending nightmare. They have had to grieve without even a grave for their loved ones. For them, justice will only be possible when the plane is found and the truth is revealed. The mystery of MH370 continues to be one of the darkest pages in aviation history. Perhaps one day the ocean will reveal its secrets, and the final chapter of this tragic story will be written. Until that day, this mystery will continue to live on as a question mark in minds and hearts. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy these kinds of mysterious events and investigations, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. See you in the next video.